Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today I will be addressing the subject revealed laws preceding the Shari'ah of Islam. I'll be reviewing some of the relevant Quranic verses on the subject, also the position of Shari'ah vis-a-vis other revealed laws. There is a recognition also of religious pluralism in Islam and in our reading of the subject I am presenting today. Shari'ah man qablana, or revealed laws of those that came before us prior to the Sharia of Islam. The basic message that is in common between all the revealed scriptures and divine laws is belief in the sovereignty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as our creator and creator of the universe, and his authority as the lawgiver and his will and the Sharia to be of authoritative upon us, and Muslims are also bound to some extent on looking at the laws prior to their own Sharia. But there is also the recognition of the need for divine guidance to show the way, the right way on which to judge our conduct in the administration of justice, moral values, and how to relate the Sharia to other revelations. There is recognition in the Quran in several places of the validity of divinely revealed laws before the Sharia of Islam. In Surah 4 verse 13 we read that we have established for you the same religion as we revealed to Prophet Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, that you establish the faith and do not be divided in it. The essence of the faith is the oneness in the supremacy of God's authority. The Quran in many places identifies itself as a confirmation, musaddiqan, of the previous revelations. In Surah 4 verse 44, for example, we reveal the Torah in which there is guidance and light, and a guide also for the prophets in the plural on which to base their judgment. And Muhammad was also one of the prophets. In another place, in Surah 6 verse 90, there is a reference to several prophets and messengers followed by this, that these are the ones that God has given, that God has guided on the right path. So follow their leadership. And the ulama are generally in agreement that all the revealed laws are manifestation of essential unity. Unity in belief in the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are differences, of course. Differences in detail. The laws of halal and haram are not identical. Similarly, ritual worship and performances are also different from one religion to another. But it is also very well known that the Sharia has preserved many of the laws of the previous revelations. For example, the law of just retaliation in some of the prescribed punishments like the hudud. They have also been there in the Torah, in some of the prior revelations before Islam. The position that is taken by the ulama generally, however, is that the Sharia of Islam is self-contained, and it is not, the other laws preceding the Sharia are not directly applicable to Muslims. But the basic question that we raise here is that perhaps that we consider them, the revealed laws before the Sharia, as applicable unless they have been abrogated specifically by the Quran. Or alternatively, putting the question as many have, that they are basically nullified and abrogated unless there is evidence specifically to validate them. And the position taken generally is for purposes of implementation. The Sharia is the only source that applies to Muslim, unless of course there is a clear reference to another source, in which case we would resort to that. It is said that the verses that we earlier referred to are concerned mainly with giving guidance with regard to the essence of religion, and not so much with regard to the details of their applied laws. But the further details about this subject, as I have reviewed in my chapter in the book Principles of Islamic Jurisprudence, looks into this matter in three parts. The Quran refers to the previous revelations in one of the three ways. Firstly, either there is a reference to the previous revelation and it is also made obligatory upon Muslims, and there is clear text, for example in Surah 2 verse 183, in an address to the believers, that we have prescribed upon you to fast in the same way as we had prescribed on previous nations. In a hadith of the Prophet, say, give sacrifice, for it is the sunnah of your forefather Abraham. Duhu فَإِنَّهُ سُنَّةُ أَبِيكُمْ إِبْرَاهِيمَ alayhi salam. The second manner of reference in the Quran to previous revelation is that the Quran refers to a law of the other scriptures, but in the meantime abrogates it. And there is example in Surah 6 verse 146, for example, with reference to some of the varieties of food that were prohibited to the Jews, but they were made permissible to Muslims. Similarly, in the Hadith, the Prophet declared that war booty was permitted to me, but they were not permitted to other nations. The law of expiation or kafara was permitted to Muslims, but this was not the case with regard to other nations. The third way that the Quran referred to the previous scripture is that there is a mention, a reference to a law of the previous revelation, but the position is not clarified. The Quran does not tell us whether it is upheld or abrogated, and there is a certain ambiguity, and it is in this regard that disagreement has arisen among the scholars as to the position with regard to such incidents in the Quran. in Surah 5 verse 48, for example, with reference to the law of just retaliation. There is a reference that we prescribe upon them, the Jews, that the law of retaliation is an-nafsu bin-nafs, life for life, eye for eye, nose for nose, to the end of the ayah. Now the particular verse come to an end without telling us whether it is to be upheld or is it abrogated. There is also a similar reference in Surah 5 verse 32, and the position taken by the leading mazahib, the leading schools of law, Hanafi, Maliki, Hanbali, and some Shafis. They maintain that these laws become part of the Shari'ah of Islam unless the Quran abrogates it specifically. The fact that the Quran makes a reference to them and there is some additional references, sufficient detail to make the meaning of this revelation all self-contained, then that by itself is an indication that it becomes a part of the Sharia. And it is on this basis that Imam Abu Hanifa gives in evidence this particular segment of the verse, an-nafs bin-nafs, life for life, and draws the conclusion that a Muslim may be executed for killing a non-Muslim, or a woman for killing a man, and vice versa, or a child. All of them fall under the provision of an-nafs bin-nafs. There is also supportive evidence, as Imam Abu Hanifa explains, elsewhere in at least two places in the Quran, Surah 42 verse 40 and Surah 2 verse 194. Both of them are about the laws of equivalence, that the recompense of an evil is the evil the like of it, that there should be no excess, and just retaliation is supported by these other provisions and therefore part of the law of Islam. Some other schools, theological schools, the Mu'tazila, the Ash'aris, and some Shafi'i jurists have taken the position, however, that the Quran has abrogated the laws that came before the Sharia of Islam, and we uphold and apply those laws only when the Quran has specifically endorsed them. Otherwise, our position remains one that the Sharia itself is self-contained, and we do not refer to other laws. And in addition to this, the reasons are given that some of the previous revelation have been actually distorted, and we are not sure about the purity of the exact version that has come down to us. Then further evidence is given with reference to Surah 4 verse 48. The Quran declares, وَلِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. To each of you, to every community in Ummah, we have revealed their own Sharia in their own way. And the advocates of this position also refer to the hadith of Mu'az ibn Jabal. In this hadith, a reference is made to the Quran, and then to the Sunnah, and then to Ijtihad. And there is no further reference to the laws preceding the Sharia of Islam. And then also that the Sharia, the Quran, is self-contained on the essentials of the law, and therefore we don't look in other directions. In addition to some of these points, they say that in actual practice, the Prophet, when issues came before him, he did not refer to the Torah or the Bible, but only to the Shari'ah of Islam, and if he did not have guidance, he would wait until he received guidance. This has been the kind of the line of reasoning that the opponents of the basic position that we explained earlier on. They say that there is little recognition for purposes of enforcement of previous shariahs. Yet in the final analysis, some very prominent ulama, including Muhammad Abu Zahra, a 20th century scholar, he advocates the position of the majority. The majority, which is Hanafi, Maliki, Hanbali, Shafi, and they tell us that those laws become a part of the Sharia under those terms. And when you look into the details, also Abu Zahra adds, yes, the Sharia is comprehensive. And there may be some little discrepancies or differences between these laws, but generally we don't have many cases of disagreement between them. And therefore the position is maintained, and that in the realm of theology we are together. That the basic message of belief in Islam as those the principle of belief in other religions, the essence of faith, that is in common. With regard to the laws, applied laws, there are some differences and there are several positions, but at the end of this analysis, I think the position taken by Abu Zahra and others that the scope of the differences is not very wide, and the spirit of concordance prevails throughout the discussion of our position with regard to the other scriptures before Islam. Thank you.